हम बोल रही थी इस चल को बोल्ट ऑफ टाइम देना तो पूरा 32 दिन का नाम दे दे हमने बोला नहीं तो मामूली पहले तो बोल तेरा मैं देखो तेरा लाइव रहेगा फाइनल हाँ मैं बोल्ट ऑफ टाइम कर
क्या आता आ रहा नीचे नीचे रुका के रखा कोविड हो गया उसको सीन हो
पहली बार मंदिर बंद है ना इस बार चुपते नहीं गए पूरा प्रोडक्शन कंपनी चालू हुआ क्या
आवाज आएगा ना
चालू है तेरा ये
मेरा भाई चालू है
ये लीजिए हो गया। आपका वीडियो मैंने ऑफ रखा अभी, आपको जब भी चाहिए ऑन कर दीजिए।
Sorry for the delay. The teams will be joining in a minute. They are facing some network issues.
Just to clarify, Team 05 is here.
And I think my co-speaker isn't here yet, so we have to wait for that.
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, so Team 18 is here as well.
So we have both the teams present here with us.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll start. We have everyone with the. Okay. Can I have the teams on their cameras?
Oh, yeah, just give me 1 second.
Yeah. Am I audible to everyone present over here?
You
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. I extend a warm welcome to each one of you all gathered here for the semifinals of Father Conceicao Rodrigues Memorial Debate 2020. Thank you to each and every one of you for being with us here today. Now, I'll introduce our first judge for the debate, Dr. Khushbu Trehan. Dr. Khushbu Trehan is an assistant professor in communication skills at DJ Sanghvi College of Engineering, Mumbai. She has an India doctorate in Canadian literature. She also is a university topper in PhD coursework with 72%. She is an certified Dale Carnegie trainer and an emotional intelligence specialist. She has worked with various professional institutions of repute, including our very own Father Conceicao Rodrigues College of Engineering, Mumbai, as a professor of communication skills. Now, coming towards our second judge, Abaja. Abaja is presently teaching business communications and ethics in Thadumal Shahani Engineering College, Bandra. She has taught in FRCRC between 2008 to 2011. She feels that merely covering the syllabus does not serve the purpose of helping the students learn the different nuances of business communications and ethics. The need of the hour is to familiarize them with the real corporate world and its challenges. We are delighted to have both of you all us with us in our midst. Now, over to the moderator, Maria, who will proceed further with the debate. Thank you. Hello, Maria. Can I have you online?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm online.
Yeah.
Hello.
Maria, turn your volume little more high. We can't hear you.
Hold on. I have a little internet issue. Hold on.
Yeah.
Could we do a quick mic check between the teams till then?
Yeah, will do. Yes, Maria, you are audible.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, Maria.
Hello. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you, Maria.
I cannot hear you all. That's the only issue. I can't hear you all. Wait, I'll just leave the meeting and join again.
Yes.
Hello. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, Maria, it's clear now.
Okay. I am so sorry for the delay.
It's no worries.
Good morning to the honorable judges, the educator, and everyone present here. Before we begin the debate, everybody please turn off your phones or whatever which will disturb you during the debate. The debate will come to order. The motion for today is: you are the loving parent of a 16-year-old. Your child has been involved in a gang related murder and comes to you for help to cover up their involvement. You believe that your child has been pressured into playing a part in this crime. Based on your knowledge, you also think that it is possible your child could be tried as an adult and that there is a strong likelihood of their conviction. The House, as the parent, would help cover up their involvement in the murder. So, representing the proposition is CMD 05, and representing the opposition is CMD 018. On behalf of the House, I would like to express a sincere welcome to the judges and the educator. I will be your moderator for today's debate. Now, for the opening speech, I would like the proposition to begin.
Can we do a mic check before all of us begin, please?
Sorry, you want me to mention all the judges and the educator?
No, I was just asking if it's possible if everyone does a quick mic check before the debate commences.
Okay, all right, yeah, sure. I think.
So I'm assuming I am audible.
Am I audible and visible?
Yeah.
Yes, Aniket. Yes, Anahat. You both are visible and audible.
Cool,
Yeah.
thanks.
All right. Before I begin, I just request anyone who's not speaking to put themselves on mute. It would be extremely disturbing otherwise. And as for time, if you could just give me the first warning at 3:30 and the second one at 4:45, that should be enough. And please over text, like don't interrupt me when I'm speaking. All right. With that, I take your permission to begin.
Yes, begin.
Members of this House, let's try to understand who this debate is really about, right? This debate is about whether you as a parent would take the decision of helping your 16-year-old child cover up an incident that they have been involved, right? So this debate is about parent and that child. It's not about society overall, right? And we tell you to that end, we need to look at why this parent has an obligation towards his child, right? We'll tell you firstly that family is the most basic social unit that we have interaction with, right? We spend the most amount of time with them. We learn the most amount of things from them. They are people that add meaning and fulfillment to every aspect of our life, right? But more importantly, we tell you that teenage is the most formative time of an individual's life, right? They're most experimental, they're most likely to make mistakes during those times, and therefore they require guidance during those times, right? And if the parent is absent during that time, not only does it lead to the child being lost and confused, but also a situation where the child would have frustration and resentment against the parent for not stepping in, which is what the 16-year-old child will feel if I as the parent don't help him out, right? He will feel resentment and frustration towards me. On to the question of guilt, right? We tell you that firstly, it's uncertain from the fact scenario that this child did this murder directly or not, right? But we tell you that even if he did, guilt exists in the matter of proportions, right? There is no binary question of he did it and he didn't do it. We tell you that the proportion here that we need to take into account is the fact that this wasn't a premeditated malicious murder, right? On the other hand, this was one where the 16-year-old, if he was involved at all, did so on instigation and peer pressure. And that proportion is something we need to keep in mind when we address this debate. Now, moving on to the main metric of this debate that this debate should be judged by, we tell you that it's very simple. It's whether there is greater reformation of the child in prison or at home with the parent, right? That's the simple metric. And to that end, my two constructives are why the criminal justice system and prisons are not reformative and rehabilitative. And the second is why the parent is best placed at home to rehabilitate the child. Now, turning to the first, I'll give you 4 reasons why the prison or the criminal justice system is not well placed, right? There is bad influence, there is susceptibility, there is lack of resources and future consequences. Now, elaborating on all of these in turn. Now, let's picture the kind of people that live in this prison when the 16-year-old child will go, right? Because keep in mind, he's not going to a juvenile home, he's going to a prison. Once he enters this prison, he's going to be surrounded by a bunch of criminals, all of them who are there for years, all of them who have negative, toxic, not just mentality, but also behavior, right? And all of that will have an impression on him, not just because of the fact that he will be living around them, but also because he's formative, and he still has a lot of behavioral aspects about him that haven't really taken shape, and therefore he will take them from the people around him, right? And who are going to be his only friends if he ends up going to prison. We tell you that it's also more susceptible for him to adopt this kind of bad influence. That's because there is this culture of bullying that exists in prison, right? Wherein the stronger and the older inmates target younger and weaker inmates that come in, right? And because of this culture of bullying, this child will either have to gang up with other inmates and form blocks, and in doing so, his survival becomes at stake, right? And because of that survival, he will have to end up adopting a very negative and harsh way of life, and there is going to be no benefit that accrues to him. But more importantly, we tell you that there is a lack of resources, right? In prison, there is no access to therapy that this individual would have. There is no access to education. Now, both these things are most crucial in shaping the thought process of this individual, right? The main goal of reformation is changing the way an individual thinks, not only to make them realize that they've done something wrong, but more importantly, to get them to change their action. And you don't get any therapy or education in prison. And there are also future consequences when you come out of prison, right? You're ostracized from society, labeled as a criminal. No one talks to you. You don't have prospects of getting a job unless you become an entrepreneur. And where do you have the money to become an entrepreneur? And you don't get a passport. And there are also greater rates of recidivism, which is greater recommission of crime by that individual, because now he's frustrated on the fringes of society, not accepted by anyone, not allowed to get a job. Now, turning to my second constructive, I'll tell you why the home is the best place, right? It's because the parent always has the child's best interest at heart, right? They want to ensure that the child gets what they need. But more importantly, this is an extremely confused and instrumental stage of a child's life, right? Where he needs a support system, someone to talk to him, someone to guide his thoughts and have a conversation with him about the things that he has done wrong. And only the parent, given their motivation, can do that, right? And they can also give them access to therapy and education and have that kind of support system carved in, right? For this kind of support that parents can provide and prison justice system cannot provide, we are extremely proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
We thank the proposition for their opening speech. We shall now hear the first speaker of the opposition give their opening speech. Opposition, will you give your opening speech? Will the first speaker come forward and give the opening speech, please?
Yeah, hi. I'm ready to start right now. Can I start at 3?
Okay.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Firstly, I would like to extend my respects to the esteemed judges and my co-speakers and competitors for taking part in this august gathering of students as well as intellectuals. From the opposition side of the house, we first bring to you a principle, one that is centered around the prime importance of the fair and righteous justice system that we need around here. Now, understand the current situation that's brought before the house right now. The house, as the parent, which was so stated by the proposition, a murder has been committed, of which a boy is a party to. He pleads his parent to cover up the gang's involvement. He pleads his parent to cover up his involvement in the murder. And the child is 16 years old, but he still faces danger of being convicted as an adult in the court. Now, in order to elaborate our stance, in order to elaborate our entire principle upon which we'll be running our entire case, I will put forward the following 2 arguments. Firstly, how concealment of the murder can lead to disastrous results. And secondly, what exactly, further elaboration on what exactly these disastrous consequences are as a result of concealment of the murder. Now, proposition speaker has squirreled this debate into making sure that the only stakeholders that we consider are the parent and the child. I'll go down that line and I will engage with him on that stance. Firstly, let us understand that there are two different kinds of parents over here that the house can be. First, we talk about if the house is a non-influential parent that does not have many government contacts. In this case, they will be solely motivated by the love and the concern, the general concern for the child's future, in which case they will go to any lengths to try to cover up the murder. However, these people are not criminal masterminds. They aren't in a certain position to actually effectively cover up their child's murder. They will not be able to do so without ending up slipping, without making a slip somewhere down the line, which will inevitably lead to prosecution, which will inevitably lead to them being caught and them also being roped in alongside with the child for not only concealment, for not only obstruction of justice, and as well as concealment of evidence as well. This is how it could be disastrous for them as well. Next, we talk about, let's assume that they're influential. Let's hold up. Now, before we talk about the influential aspect, let me tell you exactly what the benefits are, let's assume, if the parent decided to comply. As the proposition speaker himself has stated, let's assume that we're talking about it is a 16-year-old child. It is a child who, let us assume, has been coerced into committing a crime for which he is actually being tried as an adult. This entire construct I will talk about later. But assuming right now, we are talking about a child who is being convicted as an adult right now, but he has been coerced. He has been forced into committing this crime. If the parents cooperate, if the parents understand that cooperating with the current rule of law can lead to the utilization of systems such as plea bargaining, such as helping the police with the investigation, there is a good chance that the child may not even have to go to prison in the first place. He might receive a reduced sentence. There is a good chance. However small the chances, let me rephrase, however small the chances, there is a chance that he might be let off with a reduced system if the parents comply with the state of law. In the event, now let me tell you what the disastrous consequences can ensue if the parent, who let us assume is influential and is able to effectively cover up this murder, will ensue, let's assume. Now, to directly tackle what the proposition stated in a so-called second constructive, which was that the best persons to rehabilitate this child is the parent. Understand over here what this is actually going to do. We look at the child and we realize that this child is going to get emboldened by the fact that he has gone scot-free, and he might in fact commit further crimes, seeing his parents as in fact safeguards against the law. He realized, look in the case of Junko Furuta, the Japanese teenager who had gotten gang raped by multiple men in an incredibly and her body was found mutilated on the side of the road. The child, who was 17 at the time, who was let out on mere technicality that he was an adult, he was acquitted and he was emboldened. He committed crime again. As a matter of fact, this guy, ended up bragging about it. Secondly, bragging about it later. So there is no concept of rehabilitation here, but rather emboldenment, which takes down their second argument. Secondly, we talk about the victim, who we believe is an incredibly important stakeholder over here. We say that we understand that waiting for the due process of the law is incredibly long and tedious. You understand that the chance of justice and confidence in the law is reduced. The victim, let us assume that this was a gang rape that took place. Let us assume that that is what happened. There is going to be incredibly harsh mental impacts to the victim's family, as was seen in the Delhi rape case, which took over 8 years to have an effective judgment. Now, to simply conclude, we tell you that this is going to undermine the entire sacred system of the law, in which all speakers over here as law students need to uphold, all speakers over here understand and uphold as law students. As citizens of the law of any respecting state, is one's duty to ensure that justice and fair treatment is given to all. The harms that we have shown you as a result of proposition's case completely drop out any possible justification of any argument that they could make. Thank you.
Okay, we thank the opposition for their opening statement. Now we move on to the refutation round. The refutation round will begin with the opposition posing the first question.
Sure. So side opposition talked about a possibility of failure in covering up the tracks and the parent also getting involved in like the conspiracy that the child is being tried over. But given that the possibility of success exists, isn't there then a duty on part of the parent to at least try to take that risk in the interest of that child? So why is the possibility of failure a necessary argument here?
All right. So a possibility of failure was one way in which this cover up could actually go wrong. We're trying to expand the kind of parents that under the definition of parent as this house generally is. You understand that parents here are motivated by the importance of their child, the importance of the future of their child in general. So at the point, it is also good to consider that there are some parents, without even having the influential contact, might actually go to these lengths to prevent their child from being prosecuted by the law. And we tell you what the consequences can ensue out of this. And hence, we believe that it is incredibly relevant to this debate.
Can we respond to that answer? Moderator?
Yeah. Yeah, tell me. I didn't hear you. I'm so sorry.
Can we respond to the answer?
No, you cannot. You will have to just give a statement and that's about it.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay, yeah. You can respond with a statement. That's it.
Yes. Side opposition's argument does not stand because as long as the possibility of success exists, a parent will go ahead and take that risk in the interest of their child.
Okay. Now the opposition can put forward their question.
Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So the propositions themselves have acknowledged the fact that the child has done this because he was under peer pressure, which under law qualifies as duress. And duress is a valid defense in the court. So if the parent turns in the child, the defense of duress exists for him. But in your paradigm, the defense of duress cannot exist for him. So why do you think your paradigm still stands out in where the fact that he was bullied into doing this murder cannot be taken as a defense?
Two quick points of response to that. The first is that it's legally incorrect to say that duress is a defense to murder. Duress only exists as a defense to contractual obligations, while you have self-defense and other general defenses that don't include duress for murder. So this whole idea that side opposition has painted to you that there will be a reduced sentence, all of that stands untrue, right? There not only is there no chance, but also they have not engaged with you on the fact that even in their best case of there being a reduced sentence, the child still goes to prison, right? And they haven't engaged with any of the harmful consequences that happen in prison, right? They themselves spoke about peer pressure. Now, given the fact that this child is more susceptible to peer pressure, speak of the influence that exists in jail and in prison, right? If this guy was peer pressured into doing something like this by ordinary criminals, think of what more heinous criminals in prison can sort of shape this child to do, right? And for those reasons, we think that this child is best served outside of prison.
Okay, so 30-second comment to that is essentially what we have stated to you so far is that we have not completely ignored the fact that there is a good chance that the child might go to prison. We have taken that into consideration as well. What we have also told you is what the chances could happen, what something worse could happen if, say, the child was not taken to prison, went off scot-free, and is emboldened by his act. Now, this concept of being emboldened by the act is something that cannot, because parents, while they can get you off a crime, while they can get you scot-free, they will not prevent a child's mentality from thinking that my parents are going to help me out whenever I commit a heinous crime. Therefore, that is something that I believe you need to engage with.
Okay, now proposition, please put up your next question.
You mentioned the example of the Japanese teenager and how he was emboldened. My question to you here is, isn't that an extremely different scenario, given that in that situation, you had a premeditated, malicious intent on the part of that Japanese teenager, as against over here, where a teenager simply acted on the basis of his peers and had no extra malicious intent on his own? So how are you comparing these two, and why are the consequences necessarily similar?
It's interesting that you would ask that, and it's an incredibly pertinent question. Now, let me tell you one thing. Understand over here that what is going on is a child who is 16 years of age is being convicted as an adult. Now, in most common law jurisdictions, what usually takes place is that you don't commit a juvenile as an adult unless you can find out, unless his involvement in the crime, unless the crime that was committed, unless you can establish that the crime committed by him was so heinous that he is required to be tried as an adult. Now, while he might have been peer pressurized into committing said crime, you understand that the crime was still committed by him and the level of its heinousness is good enough for him to be committed, is good enough for him to be tried, is terrible enough for him to be tried as an adult. Look at jurisdictions like California, look at places like Texas and Tennessee. They only try minors as adults in case of past offenders, in the event of past serious heinous crimes. Now, we, as a result of what is going on, what we have read in the motion, have no reason to believe that this child was simply a product of peer pressure, or simply someone who was puppeted by his peers into committing an incredibly heinous crime. We believe that this is a common defense that any perpetrator just uses to justify the fact that he was in a gang and he committed a crime. I hope that answers your question.
Response to that?
Yeah, please, yeah. But you can only give a statement though.
Opposition's answer to that question goes to show that they have essentially misunderstood the motion. If I may read out the relevant part of the motion, it says that you believe as a parent that your child has been pressured into playing a part. So when the motion sets us in the shoes of a parent who has to now make a decision, it is the belief of the parent which matters. And I, as a parent, when I believe that my child wasn't actually involved in the crime, but was pressurized into committing that crime, it is that belief which will guide my decision making, and not like actually whether he committed that crime or not. So for the purposes of this motion, we have to assume that the parent genuinely believes that there wasn't any actual ill intention on part of the child, but there was only pressure which guided him into like committing murder. And by the way, there is no commission of murder, there is only involvement in the gang that committed murder. Like that, the motion does not clearly say that this child committed murder. So that's also something that they need to clarify in their case.
Okay. Thank you, proposition. Now, opposition, I would like for you to put forward your question.
Right. Engaging with the last piece, engaging with what the proposition's entire best case scenario is over here, which is that the child avoids prison, which is that the child is rehabilitated by the parent. Firstly, they haven't spoken about the concept of emboldenment. What the important thing that needs to be noted here is that once your parents have gotten you out of being prosecuted as an adult in this thing, in front of the court of law, you understand that the child will automatically feel emboldened. The child will automatically feel this thing, whether the murder has been premeditated or whether the murder has not. Understand that the child's involvement, even if I have to go through the route, the very twisted route that they're drawing so far, understand that even there is going to be a feeling of emboldenment. There is no concept of rehabilitation by the parents. My question to you right here is that how do you think effectively a parent is going to actually prevent how do you think that a parent is actually going to prevent his child from committing a crime again after having gotten him off a crime in the beginning, after having gotten him off such a heinous crime in the beginning? How do you think he's going to rehabilitate his child effectively?
The reason that emboldenment of this child is not going to happen is because this child does not have a criminal mind. Understand that the 16-year-old is not some sort of hardened criminal who decided to commit a crime because he wanted to commit that crime. Understand that a 16-year-old child is still a child who's in like a formative part of his age, who was pressurized, who made a mistake. Therefore, when he's now come to his parent to sort of rectify that mistake, his intention behind that mistake being rectified is not so that he gets another chance to make that same mistake again, but so that he gets a second chance at his life to like improve on the mistakes that he's made again. There is not one good reason as to why they've given us one good reason they've given us to why this child is going to act the same way as like a 40-year-old hardened criminal who will like look at loopholes in the law so that he can commit more and more crimes. This is a child who wants to turn his life around. So the likelihood of him like doing something positive instead of getting emboldened is higher on our side of the house. Secondly, reformation is better on our side of the houses because once there is more compassion, this parent knows more about the specific needs of the child. The parent is in the best position to guide the child in the right direction, as opposed to when that child is sent to prison, where he's surrounded by these prisoners who have a negative mentality, who have a criminal mind, and other people who do not really have that compassion towards that child. Therefore, this idea of a criminal mind being emboldened is actually more likely if that child is sent to prison than it is if the child is kept at home under the best guidance of their parents who know that.
All right. So a simple comment on that is basically what a proposition is telling you is that the parents are going to use a crooked means, abuse whatever power that they have to completely cover up the fact that the child has committed a crime in the best interests of the child. They're going to use a completely illicit means in order to so-called preserve the child's future, which will, as I've stated so far, lead disastrous consequences to whoever the victim is, will lead disastrous consequences, will throw a complete huge blanket over who committed the actual murder and who committed the murder. This is going to remain in question for an incredibly long time. It is going to prolong legislative process. The parent is willing to do all these things, is willing to skew the system in such a case, in order to protect their child. And at the end of the day, you tell me that in the light of these events, the parent is going to rehabilitate a child into being a better individual. This is side proposition's case. Thank you.
Hello. Now I would like proposition to put forward their next question.
How much time is left in the repetition round?
Now it's 10.5 minutes dot, and there is around 4 minutes left.
All right.
4.5 minutes. All right.
Yeah.
And I would like to tell you that please keep your statements up to 30 seconds and not more than that.
Sure.
Because if you keep adding on to it, you're losing time.
Yeah.
That's all. Okay. Yeah. Proposition, please go ahead and put forward your question.
Yeah. We've clearly established how this child is in a place of confusion and complete disarray as regards his own culpability and various thoughts in his mind. How are you going to ensure that this individual will stabilize and have correct thinking when he goes to prison, especially given the kind of influence he has there, the lack of access to his own parents he has there, and the lack of access to a therapist?
Right. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Could you please repeat that question?
Sure. I said that given the lack of a therapist, your own parents, and potentially the lack of education, how are you going to settle this confusion and disarray that's in the mind of this 16-year-old so as to reform him?
All right. So understand exactly what's going to happen. Now, let's assume that I go down your line and say that the child actually ends up going to prison, which we believe there is a chance that he might not as well, given certain circumstances of cooperation with the law. However, let's assume that we say that the child has gone to prison and the child has this thing. Let's look at the consequences that can arise of this. Indeed, we have a issue of the child. We have the issue of the child going to prison, going through the system, etc. And yes, we do understand that the child has a more difficult, how do I put it? We do understand that the child has an incredibly difficult path to walk when he goes through the prison system and this thing. But understand that over there, you have state-sponsored reformation, you have state-sponsored rehabilitation programs. There are rehabilitation programs that can help prisoners. There are programs that are made so that somehow prisoners find employment. So the child's life is not as effectively over as proposition makes it out to be. But understand, again, I would like to bring fact how that if we are faced with the child going to prison and the child going off scot-free for a crime that he had committed, you understand what we have already portrayed to you, the disastrous level of consequences that can take place as a result of this child going scot-free. We have told you, and there is nothing that proposition has stated so far that actually tells us why these consequences are undermined. They tell you that the child is not premeditated. They tell you that the child is not a hardened criminal. But understand that this, when you take a crooked aspect into helping your child get out of prosecution from the law, once you take a corrupt and abuse your influence and make sure that the child's involvement is covered up, this is what is going to set into the child. As they themselves have stated, the child in his developmental stages. He's learning. And once he learns, he realizes that my parents love me so much that they are willing to take on the law. They are willing to spit in the faces of the law so that I can go off scot-free. This child isn't going to be thankful. This child is still a young teenager. This child is going to have immunity. This child is going to be like, if they got me off murder, I'm pretty sure they can get me off drunk driving. I'm pretty sure they can get me off, say, I commit a rape of a woman, which actually wasn't rape because she technically consented. So I hope you understand the issue that comes with both emboldenment as well as the issue that happens to the victims, which the parents obviously do not consider as the house, but parents do not consider the house, but is a very, very pertinent example. If I have to take the Delhi rape case, if I have to take the gang rape of Yumko Furota, which we have spoken about already, these are all very pertinent cases as to what happens to both the offender who's protected as well as the victim. Neither of these points have been effectively engaged by the proposition so far.
Right. Three quick responses on what side opposition had to say, right? The first thing where they tell you that cooperation will lead to the guy not going to prison itself, that's complete lies, right? We've already established to you that at best that leads to a reduced sentence and this person still goes to jail, right? So they're lying to you. And secondly, as for what kind of reformation happens in prison, they've simply thrown around the word of state-sponsored reformation without exactly telling you how this will look like, how it's mechanized. So they have given you zero analysis on what that really means, right? They've told you that there is going to be employment that the state gives you. That again is another lie on their part, right? Because we've already established to you that it's a rule in law that once you're convicted, you don't get employment opportunities unless you become an entrepreneur by yourself, right? Which over here is not going to be the dominant case. And as for their point on emboldenment, that's something that Anahat already engaged with, right? Which is to tell you that this isn't a criminal mind who wants to commit crimes, right? This is a person who was in a susceptible situation, who made this mistake, is now being told that you shouldn't make this mistake, is fully aware that if I make this mistake again, I will face the music, and therefore I should not be doing this. Thank you.
Are you done? Okay, with this, we wrap up the refutation round. Thank you, proposition and opposition. Now, we will move on to the closing round, where the opposition's second speaker will make the closing statement.
Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, you are, yes.
Yeah. Who's keeping time?
Me, I am the moderator. Please tell me what do you want a reminder?
Yeah. I want a reminder at 3 minutes and just speak. Like, just tell me it's 3 minutes. Like, don't text on this.
Okay, I'll not. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, got it. I'll just tell you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, begin.
Please tell me. Please tell me whenever you are ready. I'm good to go.
Yeah, start.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we tell you how has the debate so far been. They have told us that, see, the child is a very vulnerable kind of a citizen in this entire debate, and he will start resenting the parent if the parent does not help him cover his crime. They don't tell us why that is problematic, because every child, or rather every human being, resents sanctions, and they don't tell us why it is immensely beneficial for the child to have a parent who is an accomplice in his crime. They need to tell us why this resentment is problematic. Because understand, if resentment is a metric, I would have resented 1,000 things which my parents did for me. For example, if they told me to study, I would resent that. So they don't tell us why resentment is a very huge problem in this entire debate, because the child is always going to resent sanctions, as it does every human being. The entire case ran on a system of how the criminal justice system is flawed, how the prison conditions are problematic, and therefore the entire case is hinged on huge ifs and buts. If the parent and the child manage to get away with the cover up, but if this doesn't happen, that happens, which looks entirely speculative when compared to our own case line. So we tell you what we found the clash points in this debate were, and how we take this debate in entirety. In the first clash point, they tell us that, see, the criminal justice system is problematic. It has poor conditions to rehabilitate. It pairs up you with other inmates who may eventually end up spoiling you. And if you go to prison, there's a social stigma associated with it. To which we say that this entire constructive of theirs is based on a huge if, that is, if the parent and the child manage to get away with the crime. And that is why where our first constructive comes out and stands out in the comparative. We tell you that, see, the certainty of them getting away with a crime like this is really less, because these are non-influential parents who aren't essentially criminal masterminds and can successfully cover up their child. We also tell you that once they cover up their child's crime, they can't take benefit of reduced sentences at all of which are recognized devices of the state. That is, in our paradigm, the benefit of reduced sentences for admitting a crime exists in reality, whereas on their side of the house, the idea that a parent who has never committed or is not a criminal mastermind would get away with a crime such as covering up someone's murder is completely speculative. And that is why we tell that on our side of the house exists more tangible and certain benefits. So we tell you that we take the debate on this clash point, because they don't tell us why we should believe that the parents would essentially be successful in the cover up, and their entire argument is conditioned on the parents getting away with the child,
3 minutes.
with the child's crime. Second, they tell us that the
3
parents can
minutes.
provide the parents can provide support, personal therapy, and make them better human beings. We in response tell you that if you are using a crooked method to cover up, it is bound to have a negative effect on the child and is bound to hamper his rehabilitation. We tell you that, see, if you cover up his crime once, he'll get emboldened by the fact that he got scot-free and might go on to commit further crimes, seeing his parents as the safeguards against this law, which can be disastrous to the society. Thus, their entire paradigm of rehabilitation goes down the drain, because it is human nature that if you once get away with a certain crime, you are more likely to think that yes, you can tweak around with it, you can circumvent the law, and you will be more predisposed to engage in the crime. Now they might come to us and tell that, see, no, once someone has done it, he may be aware of the consequences and may restrict himself from doing it. We tell you that we use their entire crux, that the child is a vulnerable stakeholder here. If the child is a vulnerable stakeholder here, he has limited understanding of consequences, of moral values and the value system. And that is why we tell you that all he is going to care is the present immediate future. He sees that he does not get sanctions in this case, he gets emboldened. And my co-speaker has already given examples on how these people then can go up into turning huge members of this huge go into commit huge crimes. For example, the Japanese example he gave, where a child got away with gang rape once and he went on to commit multiple gang rapes in the society. We give you a solid example for that. And we add to it the other fact that emboldenment of the child might encourage him retaining membership of the gang. Because think, it might be really hard for him to leave the gang now, because they know that, because the gang now can blackmail him, saying that we know that what we have on you, and that is why you can't leave us. So we take the debate on this point also, because they want us to believe that the child
Wait.
admitted to his parents because he has a drive for rectification. We tell you that may not be accurate, because children, as essentially as vulnerable stakeholders, don't think at such high levels, and essentially the child may have simply come to the parent to get him out of this quicksand. And
Opposition.
that is why their notion of
Opposition.
rectification goes down the drain.
Hello, opposition, please wrap it up, because you've gone way past the time. Just wrap it up.
Can't be more proud to oppose.
Okay, thank you, opposition, for that closing statement. Now I would like the proposition to give their closing statement. Also, opposition, please, why did you put forward a new point? The proposition is saying you put forward a new point. Don't do that. Even proposition, do not put forward a new point.
We have argued on the layer of emboldenment, which my speaker had argued in his speech.
Excuse me. I don't think like we have to point out whether if it's a new point or not. Like the teams can point it out, and then the judges can decide if it's a new point or not. Like now that it's out there, I think it's up to the judge's decision.
Yeah, but just to clarify, I wasn't referring to emboldenment. I was referring to the part on the child being a part of the gang, and now it's becoming difficult for him to leave.
Okay, all right. Leave that. Now, proposition, give your closing statement. Okay, the second member.
Yeah. Just before I begin, I also want my time things on chat, not on interruptions during.
Okay. You wanted at 3:30.
3:30 and 4:30.
Okay. Go ahead. Please start.
All right. It is interesting that opposition will claim that our case is based on speculation when all of their arguments are based on ifs and buts. They say that there is a possibility that this cover-up will fail. They say that there is a possibility that there will be a reduced sentence, and there is a possibility of emboldenment. Understand that all of these arguments are flimsy and speculative, and we've already rebutted them, but let's rebut them again with some extra analysis, right? First, on this idea of there being a possibility of this cover-up not working, understand that as long as the possibility of the cover-up working exists, the parent will take this risk. Imagine if you were a parent and your child is caught in like a burning building. If there is a 20% chance that you run into the burning building and save your child, you will take that risk. The possibility of your 80% failure will not stop you from fulfilling your parental duty. Therefore, as house, now that I know that there is a possibility of this cover-up working, when I can prevent my child from going into a really bad environment in prison by like covering up, I will take that risk. And And by on that argument alone, their argument of like this accomplice wala thing that does not really stand. Second, their argument of there being a reduced sentence, we've already rebutted that through like legal arguments, saying that there isn't necessarily a possibility of a reduced sentence, especially when the motion tells you that there is a strong likelihood of this child being treated as not only a juvenile but also as an adult. So there isn't a possibility of reduced sentence. Even if there is, he's still going to prison, which has tangible harms that we've already elaborated on. Third, on this idea of emboldenment, we've already like extensively covered this, but let's go even further. We tell you that emboldenment will not happen. Understand that this child is not an idiot. He'll understand that his parents are not superheroes, that no matter what crime he commits, he'll get away with it just because he goes to the parent. Understand that that child will know that this is an exceptional situation in which he committed a crime. The police did not catch him. Maybe there wasn't enough evidence, and now he's approached the parent to maybe sort of get away with it. That does not mean that he'll continue to commit all crimes, knowing that his parent is this sort of superhero prime minister who will get him scot free on every count. The child will know that this is an exceptional situation. He is lucky to have gotten the chance to like approach his parent and like get away with it, and he has, and it is in his own best interest to ensure that this activity does not repeat again. Therefore, their argument of emboldenment does not really stand. And in addition to that, you've already pointed out the fact that emboldenment won't happen because this isn't some hardened criminal. This isn't an individual who wants to commit more crimes. This is a child who wants to turn his life around. And when he's given the right guidance, which he will get under like parental influence and not prison influence, there is a lesser likelihood of there being any emboldenment and any recurrence of criminal activity on part of the child, right? But let's talk about an argument of reformation being better at home that they've refused to engage with on their side of the house. First of all, we've told you that prison is going to be a bad environment for this child. Understand that resentment is important from a parent's point of view. Sure, there is going to be resentment for any kind of sanction that you receive. But from a parent's point of view, no parent would want their own child to resent them. So when your child is approached you asking for help and you refuse to help them, and you know that this refusal is going to inculcate a feeling of long held resentment in that child, that is going to drive you as the house to take a decision to not refuse and help out your child. But prisons are going to be bad because prisons are filled with hardened criminals. Prisons are filled with people who want to commit crime. Prisons are filled with people who don't know the specific situation of this child. Prisons are filled with situations in which you don't get access to resources that any child of 16 years of age will require. Things like education, things like literature, things like therapy and counseling, things like guidance from people who are like actually compassionate, who care about that child. These things are completely absent in the prison, which is going to have like negative consequences on the upbringing of this child, because any child in its formative years will need this proper guidance in order to get back on track. But secondly, why is reformation better at home? Understand that the parents, not only do they know the child best, but they have the best interests of children in their mind. So any decision that they make in the future is going to be guided by this best interest, which is going to be lacking in the prison system. Then things like education, things like proper specified guidance, things like therapy and counseling are things which will only be available to this child if he stays at home, because it is only through therapy, it is only through talking out your feelings, it is only through coming to terms with the fact that you shouldn't be guided by like peer pressure of gang members, that you shouldn't be guided by like these extreme things, and you shouldn't be committing criminal activities where victims get hurt, are things that he'll only know if he gets proper counseling, if he gets proper therapy, which will only happen on our side of the house. And lastly, and most importantly, sure, victims, fairness and justice, all of that matters, but understand that this motion does not set the house as the court. We are not a court deciding as to what is just and right. We are only a parent deciding what is best for our child given the circumstances. If given the circumstances, it is in the best interest of the child to not go to prison, to stay at home and get the best reformation possible, because reformation ultimately is the entire point of prisons. Reformation is the entire point of any criminal justice system. But when prisons fail at that, it is the parents' duty to step in and take up that mantle on their own. With that, we end our case, and we very, very proud to propose.
I thank the proposition and the opposition for their closing statements. With this, we come to the end of the debate. I thank both the teams for their conduct today. We are now open to any questions and constructive comments from the judges.
I have a question to team opposition. May I proceed?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So team opposition, it is quite an underlined and undeniable fact that when it comes to children, yeah, the parents more often than not would do their best in favoring their child. So my question is, what could be the role of emotional intelligence to substantiate the line of arguments in our context?
Ma'am, I'm wondering if you could rephrase this question because I'm not sure.
What is the role of emotional intelligence? What could be the role of emotional intelligence in the frame of context of our debate?
All right, ma'am. I'll take that question. Ma'am, so what you need to actually understand over here is the concept of the ethics and morals by which the parents are raising their children. This is a point that both me and my co-speaker has repeatedly raised over here. Now, as it has already been established, ma'am, a parent would do anything to help their child, and we are not denying that. But understand over here that when it comes to long-term helping, there is no concept of rehabilitating this child. Regarding the whole, why the first emotional instinct would be to rehabilitate, first emotional instinct would be to get this child off. Why you cannot rehabilitate this child is because the very safeguard that took him out was basically contradictory to the very ethics and morals that you want this child to learn at a very developmental stage that he is in. So the role of emotional intelligence here is that of that of instinctiveness, or is that of I want to help my child immediately. But we have already underlined what this could do to injure the child's personality, to injure his actions in the future as a result if this safeguard is taken. Thank you. I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. I don't have any question to team proposition.
Okay, are there any more questions? Would our other judge want to ask any questions to either of the teams? Abha ma'am, do you have any questions for either of the teams? Okay, I think with this we come to the end of the debate. I would like the debater.
Maria, I don't have any question, but I have few feedback for the team, please.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So first of all, thank you, Emmanuel, for introducing me to the room members at the very onset of our debate. It's always a pleasure to be the part of CRMD.
Yes, ma'am.
And team proposition and opposition, it was quite an engaging debate. I thoroughly enjoyed this on, early morning on a weekend. Having said that, I would recommend team opposition to have a better coordination with your partner. As I felt that the refutation round was not timed evenly between the members of the team. All right, that's one of the recommendations I wanted to make. Team proposition, the way you had framed the constructive of the debate is quite commendable. Following the metrics and anything that could be covered under the ambit of this context. You framed it very well. That's quite commendable, like I said. Team opposition, I like the way you added those tangible examples to increase the persuasivity of your arguments. That is appreciated. And lastly, team proposition, your energy introduces you even before you speak. So I would just say that the passion is quite explicit in your diction and your vocal delivery. Keep it going.
Thank you so much.
That's it from my side. That's it.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay. So with that, we will conclude with the debate. We have come to the end of it. And Does any of the teams have anything more to say to the judges?
Is there going to be edge feedback as well? Adjudicator feedback?
No, for this debate, we don't have an adjudicator. So it's going to be the two judges only.
Maybe.
I don't think so. Abha ma'am has any more questions. Just a minute. No, she doesn't have any questions. Okay. So the teams can leave the Zoom meeting. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure being here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The judges can fill the forms right now, the score sheets. And
Yes,
ma'am,
Emmanuel.
you also can leave the, yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I've sent you the form, the score sheets form. Ma'am, you all can fill it and then you all also can leave the Zoom meeting. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us today.
Yeah, Emmanuel, I just wanted to say hello to Abha ma'am and Maria. Hello,
Hi,
Abha ma'am.
ma'am.
All good, Maria?
Yes, ma'am. Everything's good. It's
We
so
can't
nice
hear
to see
Abha
you.
ma'am.